Sorry.
You should get. Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us. This is for our second community conversation, and we're going to have one every month, the last Wednesday of the month at 6 o'clock. So our next one will be April 24th, Wednesday at 6 o'clock. And I'm really looking forward to this one on the regulatory fallacy. Just before, I assume as we've sent out the video that most have seen, but just in case, and they're short, we will play it again. I know they go pretty fast, or that could act as a reminder. Yeah, you can put in the chat where you're from and all that too. Feel free to let us know where you're from. Yeah, so if you have questions, like we'll get started with things, and there will be some of those questions also that I posed. I hope that some of you will participate and have some answers for us. And if you have a question, you can either type it in the chat or you can raise your hands and you can then unmute yourself and speak when the time is appropriate there. So, all right, folks, thanks again. And okay, tonight we're going to talk about the regulatory fallacy. So let me just first, we mentioned that we'll have some people from Youngstown, and they have a couple issues that one currently they're dealing with regulatory issues. And Susie Beiersdorfer is one of our board members, and she's got some other people from Youngstown with her. So Susie, and then we'll go and we'll talk more about their issues as soon as we play the video. But Susie, why don't you just introduce yourself and say a couple words, who's with you and so forth.
Great, thanks, Bill. Yes, good evening, everyone. And we are represented from Youngstown. I'm just going to look on the screen here. We've got Norma. She is a sister at the Dorothy Day House in Youngstown, where we actually had a meeting a week ago. And then Diana Shaheen, she's from Youngstown. Yeah, thank you, Norma, for waving. And then Diana just waved. And then we have Diana Ludwig. She's also from Youngstown. And where did Barbara Levy go? There she is. Barbara's iPhone. Barbara is also from Youngstown. I don't think I missed anyone, did I? And
Allison Green, I think.
Oh, good. Yes. Hi, Allison. Yes, I just met her at the meeting a week ago. So where Lynn, who's another Youngstown and one of the organizers for the SOBE, which we will talk about after the video, she gave a presentation on updating everything that's been going on.
Okay. So
yeah.
Susie will play the video here, and again, it's just 4 minutes. You might have seen it before, but we'll just for the benefit of everyone, we'll play that, and we'll get started after that.
Yes, so I'll share my messy screen and then.
Hello and welcome to our next community suggested topic here on Fast Fact Friday. We are the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund, and we are answering your questions. Today we're going over the regulatory fallacy. Last week we touched on the regulatory fallacy, but viewers wanted a deeper dive. So today we're here asking, is it really illegal to think outside of the box? What is it that keeps us from protecting our communities? Why aren't we allowed to say no when a corporation wants to come in and drill, dump, or destroy? The short answer, the law. A handful of legal doctrines make it illegal for communities to govern on important issues like fracking, factory farms, large-scale infrastructure projects, and commercial water extraction. Many people work hard to create sustainable communities, but these legal doctrines keep us running around in circles. The system of law that is currently in place routinely restricts local lawmaking and pushes back against communities who try to make things safer for its residents. Let's use the issue of fracking, but really you can insert any issue your community faces here. We're going to use it to talk about how these legal doctrines prevent you from acting and protect the industry from citizen
Oops, pause there, Susie.
Yes.
opposition. The permitting process and the regulatory laws supposedly enforced by regulatory agencies are often intended to create a sense of protection and objective oversight. We're encouraged to come to the hearing at 7 p.m. if we're opposed to the fracking, but no one bothers to tell us that no matter how harmful fracking is, municipalities cannot ban anything permitted by the state. We sit there and wait our turn. They call our name, and then we present our 3-minute impassioned speech about the risks to community health and community well-being. But in the end, nothing we say is taken into account by the agency when they make the decision to issue the permit. If the application is in order and complete, the permit is issued by the agency. The harms are then legalized. The permitting agency is in business to facilitate the issuance of the permit, not to protect people or the ecosystem. The idea that regulations protect us is a fallacy. By their very definition, they permit harm, and we are taught that our best option is to regulate just how much harm we are required to accept. You might argue, but zoning lets us stop harms, right? Well, not really. Zoning allows us, in most cases, to decide where the industrial damage can occur. In other words, we get to choose which part of our community we want sacrificed to harmful corporate activity. And in most cases, those in a lower socioeconomic status take the brunt of the harm, which often leads to environmental injustice. While our legal system creates the illusion that we have a democracy, the regulatory fallacy is part of a system that helps to funnel us into a trap where we're told when it comes down to actual governing and creating sustainable communities that we are beyond our authority. But we're not. We are the authority. We have the power to demand change. So instead of allowing yourself to be regulated by this environmental protection fallacy, instead of losing your voice, going to hearing after hearing, instead of exhausting your resources, your energy, and your time, why not cut the cord and demand the change? Thanks for joining us for episode 6 of Fast Fact Friday. If you want more information on the regulatory fallacy, head over to celdef.org. And remember, if you have a suggested topic, go ahead and send us an email. Thanks for watching.
Okay, thank you, Susie. Okay, so the first question, let's get to that, and that I had sent out and we posed to all of you, and I hope some of you will also provide examples, because I'm sure a lot of you have had experience with regulatory agencies, is have you or your community had any experience with a regulatory agency? And it doesn't have to be environmental. And what was the process and result? So let's start with the Youngstown. So Susie and your group, go ahead and tell us what your experiences with regulatory agencies.
Yes, well, I'll give a little background, and then others from Youngstown can, add anything they'd like. Some people may have just heard this for the first time last week, so it'll be interesting to get their perspectives also. So in 2011, fracking and injection wells came to Youngstown, and there was an injection well that in December, we had been having hundreds of earthquakes, but in December 31st, there was a 4.0 at 3 in the afternoon. A number of us had been working on fracking issues because we have a wonderful, beautiful Mill Creek Park here, and we found out that the deep drilling rights had been sold to Chesapeake Oil around the park. So We got in touch after, going through talking to our local representatives, our state representatives. Lynn actually just came across cell death. And so we started, that's the Community Environmental Legal Defense Fund. So we started having conference calls with them. I think there were about 6 or 8 of us on the calls. And there was no way to just save the park because of the way there's townships, there's cities. So we started we started looking at writing a Bill of Rights for our city. So that earthquake on December 31st really shook people up, and nobody really knew there'd been an injection well, and so we started finding out all this stuff that the state doesn't have to tell a local government if they're going to put in oil and gas. Oil and gas was exempt from that, from a certain House bill. HB 278. some of the numbers I still have in my head. So we proceeded to try to say that we're going to ban fracking in Youngstown. Well, that didn't work out so well, but we have a motto in Youngstown: we don't lose until we quit. So we ended up going onto the ballot 8 times. We were labeled job killers, and we know of $500,000 spent against us, and that's just what was in the records. So much more. And again, but we persisted. And one of the wins is that there hasn't been any new injection wells or that kind of thing around. So I don't know if we've created hostile environment, or that I'm a retired geology teacher. So, or if we just don't have the subsurface potential for fracking. But then in 2021, there was a 2-sentence thing in the newspaper that this company called Sobe Energy Solutions out of Dublin, Ohio, was going to be taking over our steam heating and cooling. There was a company called Youngstown Thermal, and they basically went bankrupt. And they're right next to downtown, which has been having a lot of revitalization. So anyway, so Sobe gets the permit to do heating and cooling. Well, in I want to say the spring of 2022, we start hearing about all these business plans to build a pyrolysis plant. And that's where they superheat tires to create synthetic gas and other commodities. So basically, and the CEO, David Farrow, has said this numerous times, is he doesn't want to be just a public utility, because the other one went out of business, and you got to have a business plan and you got to make money. His business plan has changed so many times, but the pyrolysis is where they take the chopped up tires, which now the state has designated that they're not solid waste. If you tire derived chips, so if you chop them up, they're no longer solid waste. And I think we all know that tires are not just rubber either. There's many toxic chemicals. So anyway, he put in a application for a Ohio EPA air permit, and they in July of 2023 they issued the draft air permit. And
The EPA, you mean?
EPA, yes. So we formed in, I want to say, July of 2022. Sobe Concerned Citizens is the name of our group. And so we were doing educations, town halls, going to the local city government and speaking in front of council. And, education is very important. But the thing that strikes people is, why would they put a polluting business right next to our downtown? So after the Ohio EPA issued the draft air permit, we did even more things. We had we wrote comments to the EPA. We did direct mailers to educate people and, you know, let them know. This is actually a poster, but it's we had this email: "We are not guinea pigs. Sobe, no way." We had a billboard. We have a website, and I'll put all that stuff in throughout tonight. So that was July, and then August 10th, the Ohio EPA had a public meeting at a local community center. Now, there was a checklist of things they were supposed to do, and I don't even know this person, but they wrote me on the day of the meeting saying that their business had not been notified. And the EPA, Ohio EPA, was supposed to notify, you know, businesses around the area. So there were a lot of people that showed up at that public hearing, gave recorded comments. There were also people who showed up. I call them the investors. They had black Sobe t-shirts on. I can't remember what it said, you know, for clean and livable future or something. But so again, Ohio EPA took down all our comments. And then we also did postcards and you know, got people to email in or write letters in. And that deadline was September 10th. And one thing, Youngstown is a environmental justice community of concern. And the US EPA has an interim policy since August of 2022 about environmental justice communities, and that environmental justice needs to be taken into account. We have high asthma rates, low birth weights, and African-American infant mortality issues, cancer, because I mean, most people know Youngstown's longtime steel town. Anyway, so this interim policy, you know, I mean, it needs to be codified into law. And then maybe the Ohio EPA would listen. But on February, one more thing, the US EPA actually sent in a comment to the Ohio EPA, urging them to take a closer look at the environmental justice issues that had been raised by so many residents. So all that to say that the Ohio EPA issued the final permit on Valentine's Day. So a little over a month ago. I don't think that was a coincidence. So, so the next steps in the regulatory fallacy are to put in an appeal to the environmental, it's IRAC. And of course, right now my brain, environmental review, I can't remember the other two. Anyway, so, two other great things. September of 2023, our council passed a resolution that we don't want Sobe in the city. So the benefit of that is we're now working with the city. We have a working relationship. Certainly during fracking, we did not, because we were hurting the, economic, future of Youngstown. But then in December, our city council passed an emergency ordinance for a 1-year moratorium. That there can be no building of pyrolysis plants for a year while they gather more information. So right now we're working on 3 prongs. One is the city of Youngstown put in an appeal to IRAC to have to say to the Ohio EPA, you need to revoke the air permit. Also, the thermal plant, the heating plant, is in mixed use community zoning, not industrial zone. So that changed in 2013, but the heating cooling plant, they can still operate that, but they can't build out, according to the zoning. So that's the second prong. And then the moratorium, the 1-year hold. now there, we haven't noticed any new building going on down there. So we're just we say sobe no way, no means no, and that's what we're working with. So
Okay.
does anyone from Youngstown have anything else to add?
Somebody's on mute there. Diana is on mute, I think. Yeah. If you want to unmute yourself, Diana, go ahead.
I did. Okay. I just think it's wonderful, Susie, that you and Lynn have created an atmosphere that, is so that city council feels that they can work with us now. I think that what you and Lynn have done is phenomenal. That's all. That's all I have to say. I think it's that because they were so hostile to us during the fracking. And so that now, now they're friendly. It's just like, so it's like something is getting through, but I don't know. That's good.
One thing that strikes me is that, well, it isn't always the city council's even on your side, but you got city council on your side, but the Ohio EPA has still issued the permit. And it just shows another, they're the ones that are supposed to be protecting your health, right? Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, Susie, I gotta go like in a couple of minutes, but I have a question based on Diana's comment. Is the city supposed to make any money from the Sobe plant or no? You know how they always get us with that, like, it's bringing a ton of money to the revenue to the
Or
city.
jobs, right?
Yeah, I'm wondering if that's another reason too. Yeah.
I mean, there's no jobs that would be generated, and he certainly hasn't said out in the open, that there's any big economic. It's more like we'd be cutting edge with it's called advanced recycling, chemical recycling, green recycling. It's green energy, so it'd be more of a status that we could have. Yeah, so it's not
because that's part of the story too, because fracking with that, they were promising the city so much money, and they were leasing streets like in Broadview Heights too to make money.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll open up what about the rest of you that's joining us? Do you have any examples that you've been a part of or your community is a part of dealing with something with a regulatory agency? Feel free to raise your hand, unmute yourself if you'd like to speak. Or know of some other examples. Yeah, go ahead, Sarah Koya.
Well, down here in Athens, we have a lot of injection wells brought to us by various frackers from around different communities and even from out of state. And when we've gone about trying to say, no, we don't want any more injection wells, or we're concerned about the amount of waste being put down under our water table, and we don't think it will just stay there, and we don't think that the concrete barrier is really going to keep the stuff from moving around, they say, I'm sorry, but you have no local control over that, and only the ODNR can decide where these injection wells get placed and who gets to benefit from them. And they've decided that it's so great that they can just give the ODNR only gives Athens pennies on the barrel for the first few barrels of waste that are dumped here. And then after that, we don't have any revenue from it at all. So that is a regulatory fallacy that we're caught up in. So
Okay.
that's been our experience.
Thanks, Sarah Koya. There's a question. So, Stephanie asked, how do you find out if your town is an environmental justice town? Do you have any idea on that, Susie, or anybody else there? Or is it just made known? I don't know.
Boy, there's a website, which of course I don't have that up tonight, but I can certainly find it. I'll make a note. You know, it's with the US EPA. I mean, it's on their site and it's an environmental justice, but that is a very good question though.
Anyone else have any examples that they can think of dealing with regulatory agency of some harm that you didn't want? Didn't have to be fracking necessarily. Could be anything.
I do.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah. I came back to Ohio from New York, Long Island, and there I was involved in a landfill problem that supposedly caused cancer because of the toxicity of the materials in the landfill. Over 35 VOCs and dead animals and medical waste and all kinds of things. And the issue was they needed the proper measurements. We went to everybody, everybody, all the regulatory agencies. And all of a sudden, Covanta moved in. I don't know if you're familiar with Covanta. It's a multinational corporation that deals in waste. Instead of waste being waste, now is a commodity to be sold. And they're shipping it out to guess where? Ohio, Fostoria. And it's the same debris. So, it's still ongoing. It's still ongoing. I'm in a lawsuit against that landfill with a bunch of other people, with a big law firm. And it's just dragging on. It's dragging on for, I think it's almost 5 years now. This discovery process isn't over. And there's so much covering up and so on. But out there, and this is the last thing I have to say, there's the Surfrider organization, because Long Island is surrounded by water. So Surfrider came in and they're doing some really good work. They stopped a LNG area in Long Beach. There's all of Long Island is being threatened right now with Grumman, a toxic plume. It goes on and on. Really, the entire island. BNL, the energy department, has leached the water with radioactivity, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the whole of the island. And so what happened was the multinational corporation swooped in. And I think the only way to change any of this is to rewrite the law and get rid of the Citizens United business, if you're familiar with that legal document or whatever it is. Anyway, which allowed corporations to be people and to be treated with the same civil rights as people are treated. And I think that's the issue. The multinational corporations have more power than small communities. And it's the same sort of communities of color are being affected the most in Bellport, New York, and as are the Shinnecock reservation. They have shellfishing and this and that, and a lot of that is being threatened. Their lives are being threatened by these people. So I think it's a matter of overturning. I don't know how you do it. I don't know the legal language, but the Citizens United has to stop. Somebody somewhere has to overturn that or change that around. Otherwise,
Well, yeah, Barb, that is that is one of many approaches that need to be taken. I know Sandy is on tonight, and she works with the move to amend and overturning Citizens United. And the problem is that the corporations and many politicians are basically in bed together. And I know Sandy
right.
in the chat, how about drafting a law that promises to prosecute oil and gas executives and their electeds who are behind policies that harm Ohioans? Yes, I wish we could. And in order to, if you want to write a law and try to do it at the state level, because our group, Ohio Community Rights Network, we were, we
Yeah.
started in 2013, and we have actually written a couple constitutional amendments. But so you start with getting 1,000 signatures, and then I don't remember which commission, Bill, they either approve it or don't approve it. And we were very surprised that ours was approved. But then time, which is but 2014 through 16, we were getting signatures. You get them from every county. And anyway, it would cost, you'd need $1 million to even think about something. So even though we have these opportunities, the challenges that would need to be, dealt with to have something happen like that. Yeah. So I don't know.
Right.
Yeah, I think it goes deeper than just Citizens United, because corporations have rights that we have, and it's not just that one's money is speech right that they have, but they've got, and Sandy can speak more about that. That's the first right, but they have the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, and the 14th Amendment, I believe it is, Sandy, right? Rights, and with our Constitution having things such as a Commerce Clause and a Takings Clause, that also allows a lot of this stuff to happen. So certainly that's part of the puzzle, but will help. But it's deeper. It goes deeper than that there. But
oh God.
Yeah. Before we get into the other questions, anybody else have any examples about regulatory agencies and how they have not worked or worked? I'd like to hear an example where they worked, but I don't think I'll hear one, unfortunately. Yeah.
I do have that other one.
Oh, yes, please go ahead.
Austin Masters. This one just popped up. So I'm looking over at my other screen because I have it over here. The Attorney General just came out with a news release yesterday that says they're gonna pursue legal action against a company called Austin Masters that's down in Martins Ferry, because they are storing too much of the radioactive fracking waste down there. So whatever their permit says, they've exceeded their permit. And so 2 quotes in this article. One is, "This company's negligence is threatening to put Ohio communities and our natural resources in jeopardy," Yost said. "We are acting quickly to try to prevent a big environmental mess." This company was in Youngstown, Ohio in 2014, 10 years ago. They say they moved because there wasn't the business up here, whatever. What happened was, it wasn't even under regulations. It's something that the ODNR has called chief's orders. And chief's orders, it was at the time, the chief allowed 23 different companies involved with fracking and the injection of the waste, the disposal of the waste, the cleaning of the tanks, to just pop up. So many of our people here had a mentor, Teresa Mills, who recently passed, and she called me one afternoon and said, "Susie, have you heard about this radioactive processing plant coming in next to your river?" I'm like, "No." So I called the zoning office, I called the mayor, I called the Mahoning County fire chief. Nobody knew anything. So that's just the way that works. So much for, being quick about it. A little side note, activists in Ohio have uncovered that the Ohio Department of Natural Resources has known that drilling waste from oil and gas, well, it's been radioactive since 1983. I mean, we know that it's been radioactive long before that, but nothing has changed since 1983 to regulate the harm. So, and then one other statement in this Attorney General was, "The Attorney General's office and ODNR work collaboratively to safeguard Ohio's environment and public health." That is a false statement.
That is laughable there. Yeah,
Yeah.
let me just, before we get to the next question, I just want to point out one more thing that you may have heard of, that the fracking in state parks. Again, people have gone to the hearings. They're supposed to go through these 9 points of things that they're supposed to satisfy. There's been, I don't know, hundreds of comments against the whole thing, and very, very few for, and the ones, a lot of them that were for were found to be false comments. That they were, I forget exactly the details, but something, they weren't from real people or something like that. But anyhow, but what's happened? Fracking is going ahead in our state parks anyhow. So they've already selling the parcels and so forth. So, you know, the issue is why, you know, we should have the power, the people, to say, we don't want this, and it should happen. But let me, if you think of some more examples, we'll come back to them. But let's get to the second question. When we think about what permits are, what do permits actually do? Regulatory agencies issue permits, but what do the permits really do when you think about it? Anybody have any comments on that, thoughts on that? Yeah, Sarah, go ahead, or Joe? Joe?
Yeah, basically regulatory permits regulates the harm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That's the long and short of it.
They permit harm.
Yeah, so in other words, they say,
Right.
okay, we're going to allow this
Yeah.
amount of harm, right?
Yeah,
And
exactly.
and are the people ever consulted in that? I think we know the answer
Well,
to that.
sometimes we have a hearing and people can submit their concerns in writing, and then I don't know if they file them in the circular file or where they go from there.
I
But
think that's where they usually go, because it seems like they just never
it's the pacifying of us. Oh, fill this out. We're thinking about you,
yeah.
you know.
One more thing to add to what Susie was talking about, Austin Masters, and about ODNR, and about that statement about, oh, they're working with the Attorney General to save our environment and all that. That Austin Masters, well, the ODNR hasn't had regulations to deal, even if you believe in regulations of any kind, they didn't even have them to deal with the radioactive waste that this facility was dealing with. And they've been saying that they were trying to get those in place. And it took more than 8 years, and finally, I think a couple of years ago. But what happened is all the regulations that they put in place were from the industry. We know that some of you may know Dr. Julie Weatherton Rice, who's a geologist, a soil scientist. She's got more than 40 years experience with oil and gas contamination and issues of water and things like that. She went through those comments, well, what they were proposing as the regulations in great detail, and they didn't take a single one of them. And she's got a PhD, of course, and lots of experience. So another example, as we know, another problem is that they come through, these rules come through the agencies, really. But yeah, so permits, actually, we aren't consulted in that, and they say, and we're supposed to believe a certain amount of harm is so-called okay. So another question that I've got there is, what are some of the problems with regulations and regulatory agencies, and are they really designed to protect us? I think we've seen some examples of that, but maybe there's some more things that people would like to comment on. Sandy's got her hand up. Go ahead, Sandy. Go ahead, you have to unmute yourself.
Okay, yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but it's the box of unallowable, what's
Allowable activism.
Allowable activism.
that is such a great, I should have that in my purse with me all the
I
time.
think it's on our website, isn't it, Susie? Yeah.
Yeah, and I have many copies of it, but just wish I had it right now. But it's perfect because you've been talking about how people go to our representatives. Legally, we have the right to express our opinion, but when the electeds are bought and paid for, our opinion doesn't really mean a lot. And I live here in Columbus, so when things are at the State House, it's just a short drive from me. But I have seen people come from all the way from Toledo and Cincinnati and Dayton and everywhere else, taking the day off, finding childcare, elderly care, having the most remarkable speeches, testimonies, and they do them in person because it means so much to them. And you will have, how many times, a lot of people on this call are going to be able to relate to this. How many times have we been there, a hearing, and of course they delay it and they don't tell us till the last minute anyway. And then there'll be more than 100 testimonies, sometimes almost 200 testimonies in favor. And on the other side, 6, 8, maybe 10 max and they're all like lobbyists. They're paid to be there.
Mhm.
So this whole thing is just atrocious. And so, yeah, I think we do need to, we've got enough experience with that. I think we do need to be hard hitting with this at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, and other comments. Somebody wrote, what was this? Okay, look at the bill that the bans transcare. Yeah, well, another example of many, many comments is you just look at the bills that are passed from the State House. If you look at most of those, especially the bad ones, and it seems like there's a lot of them. Like Sandy said, there might be huge testimonies against them, hundreds, and maybe 5 for it that are usually lobbyists or stand to benefit from it, and they usually get passed anyhow. Yeah, Joe, go ahead.
Yeah, Bill, another regulatory fallacy is the Muskingum Watershed Conservancy District. They've been around for many, many years, and they decided to sell millions upon millions of gallons to the fracking industry, knowing that every gallon they sold would end up polluted. It's kind of an oxymoron, conservancy and polluted water, but now they can pave parking lots and improve their parks. So everything is fine.
Mhm.
Unreal. You can't make this stuff up.
Yeah. One thing that people can think about, and we've had more than 50 years of the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, and all that, but are we really any cleaner than we were back more than 50 years ago? Are things any really that much better? When I think I heard a statistic, and maybe it's even more now, at least 40% of our waters in the nation are unusable. Can't be swam in or used for drinking water, I suppose, unless they highly spend a lot of money processing them. So it's something to think about what these agencies are doing. And one of the things that we think about is we're tired of going through what we call the hamster wheel of going to the agency, giving our comments as if that's all we can do. And we're trying to say, let's think outside the box and find ways to demand that something that that's going to happen that we really want, instead of just saying this is all we can hope for like that. Somebody I know has made a comment that the regulatory agencies really are just regulate the environmentalists. They don't do much else there. So yeah, just a comment there to provoke a little bit of thoughts. Yeah, go ahead, Sarah Coy.
I was just surprised to hear how our attorney Yost is working so hard to protect our environment, coming down here and suing the city of Athens over our plastic bags ban. You know, like we really need those plastic bags blowing around and getting into our streams and affecting our turtles. You know, that's so important how he thinks that he enshrined the right to them into our Ohio Revised Code. So I'm just so surprised that he's working so hard in other cities as well to do what he can to make the environment better. I just feel like he has a little bit of a different opinion than I do about what makes a better environment or how we want to protect that. And I think that's pretty common with our electeds and our regulatory agencies.
Hmm. Well, maybe, do you think he might be running for governor?
Oh, well, that would
Yes.
be fantastic.
Yes.
Maybe that's part of this there.
Who
Yes.
knows what sort of protections he could provide then?
Yes.
And for who? His cronies at the,
Yeah, boy.
capitalist cronies in the Congress?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, go
I
ahead.
think it's interesting that
Barbara,
they
it's got-
still
yeah.
have the,
Oh, good.
oh.
Yeah, go ahead,
You
Sarah,
know-
or you can finish up. Yeah.
Oh, I was just thinking about the nuclear, they have that contract with the nuclear agency,
Hmm.
that Householder set up that's still in place, even though he's in prison serving time for,
Right.
his role in that scandal. And then we still have, these energy companies with, holding on to their contracts that he won for them, being are elected working for the corporations.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Barbara, you wanted to say something?
Well, one of the things that I've noticed since I've been back in Ohio is that the law is supposed to protect us. Law is supposed to protect us. And instead it's weaponized. It's used against us
Yeah.
in Ohio, in particular in Ohio. It's not necessarily true where I came from in New York, but it is true here. And every time you don't like somebody cites a law about anything. It could be anything at all, like, painting the streets, patching the streets, whatever it is. It's, well, the law says, the law reads, when I rented my current place, well, the lease says, it's a thing in Ohio where the law is a weapon.
Yeah.
It does not, it's not meant to protect. At any rate, I've never, experienced that in my life before until I came back here.
Hmm.
Anyway, that's it. That's it.
Mhm.
That's all I have to say. I'm aggravated.
Yes. Now, yeah, I would have to say that I think that okay, maybe New York's better, but I think a lot of other states have the similar problem as Ohio. But yeah, Ohio certainly has been known as the toilet bowl of the nation, taking waste, frack waste and other kinds of waste like you just mentioned there, like that. Let me get to the last
Yeah,
thing here.
I put the web link to our first Ohio community conversation, which was a month ago, which was on preemption. And the featured community was Athens and Saracoya. So there's more about that story, and also about preemption, where the state, comes in ahead and says local governments can't ban plastic bags, or can't decide where to put oil and gas or other things. So that just wanted to let you know that. I also put in the video for the box of allowable activism. So preemption is one side of the box, regulatory fallacy is another side, and there's two more sides that we'll be discussing.
Yeah,
also.
you're right. Corporate rights and so-called rights for corporations, and I forget the other one there. I think it's
Nature as property.
right.
Like
Let me get to
law.
the last question I had, unless somebody else has some questions, please add them too. Okay, with some of these we've discussed, but maybe can think of some others. What are some of the reasons that make it difficult or impossible for people to create the sustainable communities they envision? One of those that Susie just mentioned from our last one was preemption, where you're preventing communities from doing something good. Another one, like we've been talking today, is the regulations that don't seem to be working for the people. Any other thoughts or ideas about some of these things that are in our way, doing environmental justice or other kinds of justice?
Well, we keep electing criminals, and and the criminals are basically, put into office by huge.
Whoops, I think we lost you a second there, Drake. I think you went mute there.
That's kind of the root of the problem, because people's minds,
Thank you, man. You have a great night.
You too, thanks.
Yeah, sorry, Drake, we missed
is
a
to
little
get
bit
people
of
to
what
vote
you
for
said.
people that are only going to support the corporations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have bad internet connection. Was that not getting through?
Yeah, but part of it didn't in the middle there. Yeah. Were you talking about
Okay.
propaganda or what was it that
Yeah,
you?
yeah, well, propaganda or, like campaign ads or propaganda. And, the news actually is propaganda. Like the mainstream media is completely unreliable. The mainstream media is completely infiltrated by the corporations, and the messaging we get is completely misleading.
Mhm. Okay. All right, Sandy, you have your hand up.
Sandy and then Jamie.
Yeah, I'm kind of going off the same thing that was said. I mean, we are so blocked by the politics of it. We're not having fair elections, gerrymandering, the primaries on both sides, because we're only allowed two parties in this state, this country. The parties are telling us who to vote for during primaries. They're excluding voters, a lot of voters. I mean, there's so many things that have to do with the voting. And then the other thing is, so many Ohioans feel like we can't change anything anyway. How bad can it be? I mean, they're really not going to they're not going to really kill our environment, are they? There's, people are busy and they don't know where to get the information. And this is something where actually the people on this group, and I know work on anyway, but maybe we could do this more holistically, is like send out information about those who are running, who believe in protecting the environment and democracy. So that's it.
Okay, yeah. Bob,
Jamie.
Bob and somebody else, who is it? Sorry?
Jamie had his real hand raised, and then
Oh,
Bob.
okay. Jamie and then Bob. Is Jamie, you wanted to say something or not?
You're on mute.
Go ahead, Bob. Or I just wanted to say that an example of the corruption that you're talking about is Sam Randazzo, who is under indictment, and he approved the chip plant here in Columbus, Ohio. And at the very least, that chip plant should be reviewed again by somebody who is not compromised.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was going to mention that I attended, and there were so many testimonies when he was head of the PUCO against the plant at OSU that takes frack gas and that they're building, and they say for more dorms and other buildings there, and people. Many were against it, and only very few. And of course, he went ahead and approved it anyhow. And of course, yeah, well, look who he is. Sorry. Okay, Bob, go ahead.
I would just like to make a comment about how this pertains to healthcare. I'm a Medicare for All advocate. And you have the large corporations, pharma, hospital conglomerates, and health insurance companies who spend a lot of money in the media. So you got four enemies of this who just want to keep this train going. It's virtually impossible to talk to elected people about this issue of the human ecology that we should be fostering and enabling. The state passed Medicaid, but there are barriers put up to people who are on Medicaid so they can't get the services they need. And it goes on and on. But I hope that you would continue to support Medicare for All, support Medicare to start with, because that's being eroded by corporations trying to privatize it.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead. Barbara's got her hand up. Are there any questions in the chat?
Well, I don't want to jump in if there's other people that haven't spoken.
No, I don't see any. Go ahead. Go ahead.
There's two
Well,
things
okay,
in the chat, but we'll do that after you talk.
Okay. I just want to bring up a couple of things. There's a lot of quote unquote social engineering going on the internet. And a person that is, I believe, very important, and everybody needs to know who he is Cory Doctorow, who's he's not from America, but he makes a lot of good points about how data is being manipulated and, to these ends that everybody's talking about. And he calls it, and it's important to kind of go find out about him. He calls it e-shitification. So that if you have the idea that you want to go from point A to point B, this social engineering won't let you get there. Right? This is that wheel you talked about. It won't let you get there because of the algorithms involved. Meta is also very involved with the health insurance industry, or the health industry, and they're trying to find interventions with stem cell technology and this and that. It's widespread all over the place, where they even have like kids using origami trying to figure out interventions. but how to inject something into somebody's cellular structure so that they could be cured of cancer, and it's not far-fetched. We're getting close to that stuff. And I think if we could look at those models, all those different models, and apply all those models to this business, it might be useful. This business, honest to God, I feel like it's if you ever saw Wall-E, did you ever see Wall-E? I feel like we're
Wall-E.
I feel like we're still living in Wall-E.
Yeah.
We haven't got any rate. Blah blah blah. But e-shitification, look it up. Find out about Cory Doctorow.
Yeah. Okay, Jamie, go ahead.
I just want to say that I think that electric cars are doing, there are actually like 2 million cars, electric cars going on the market every year, and each one of those should represent about 1,000 gallons of gas per year that is not being consumed, and the demand for petroleum has to be affected, even 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 a little bit. And in the solar panels and solar industry is also a rising force, and we should also be encouraged to go solar and go with electric vehicles, even though there might still be some environmental problems with electric vehicles and such. It still has to be minute compared to the petroleum industry, which is trucking or hauling all this gas from halfway around the world, Saudi Arabia. It's got to be terribly inefficient. And not to mention that fracking is also terribly inefficient, because can you imagine the amount of energy it takes to liberate the natural gas from the rock alone? It has to be quite a bit. And then when you figure in the amount of energy that it takes to transport it by truck, you can see that it's probably not that much profitability. There's not that much profitability, and the only reason why it's profitable is because they're not giving the landowners a good amount, a proper amount for the use of their land and the destruction of their environment, which is what they are doing.
And they're also receiving huge subsidies, the oil and gas. And one thing that, what you're mentioning is it's sort of like, what is the proportion of energy in to energy out? And so, what is the most efficient way? I wanted to do a couple things from the chat.
Okay, sure. Go ahead, Susie. Yeah.
Stephanie had said it's the whole system, and that's right. It is the whole system. Like I say, the system isn't broken, it's fixed and working just fine goes in power. So we need to break the system, create something new. And one of the things that we all know is that all change begins at the local level.
Right.
And so, it's about envisioning what we want our communities to be now and in the future. Diana Ludwig also brought up, and this is happening all around Ohio, where we're being given the choice whether to have large-scale solar projects. And we just had that come up in Mahoning County. And certainly there are environmental issues with large scale solar. I mean, why can't we do much smaller local, and why aren't more subsidies given for smaller solar farms? But again, that's another one where they're controlling what's going to be happening. I'm sure there's a lot of oil and gas lobbyists in
Well,
Columbus working on that one.
I know that we're, no, go ahead, sorry.
I figure that what the gas company wants to do, they want to get on the ground floor of the solar and wind. They really do, they want to make money from it. So of course they're going to
Any way to make money, yeah.
So they want to control it. So they're
Yeah.
not going to let it happen until they're in and they're running it, which is kind of frightening. But
Right, yeah, because it's not going to work in our favor, I'm sure that way.
Well, that's how the plastics of, I mean, they're, plastics are petroleum products. So they're just finding a way to prolong it. Yeah, sorry, Bill.
I know we're getting past the hour here, but I wanted to tie this together at least with some things that our organization works for, that I think if we had these things would be a big step toward it. One is community rights. And you say, okay, so that communities could actually make these decisions. Some communities have passed them. And even if they've been challenged, like in Broadview Heights, they've been effective in the sense because not another well has been drilled. Youngstown, Susie said that there's even though they haven't even got one passed, that the fact that they've gone through the effort to do this has had some benefits here. And then part of it is just letting people see another way and say, shouldn't we have these rights? Shouldn't we be able to decide what we want that concerns our health, safety, and welfare in our own communities? And we got approved back, I think it was 2017, the Ohio Community Rights Network, for 2 statewide amendments. But of course, we haven't been able to gather the signatures because we don't have an enormous amount of money and an enormous amount of volunteers. We would love that. One is called the Community Rights Amendment that says the community should have the rights to pass laws and enforce them for their health, safety, and welfare, and not be preempted by the state as long as they're not taking away rights that are given to people, real people, from our Constitution, our state, and our federal one. So it seems like a reasonable thing there. And the other thing that we advocate for is rights of nature, is if nature isn't considered a property, but that it is considered that it has rights bearings and has standing, then that the pollution aspect and the harm aspect of many projects, we would have another window to argue about its benefit or detriment by considering how it affects nature, which affects us, because obviously we're inseparable from nature. So those are a couple of things that I wanted to say. Any last minute comments here? And before we take those, let me just say, so before I forget, that we will be sending out a real short feedback form, and we would appreciate if you could fill in any part of it. Some of it is all you have to do is check a box there, and only a couple of them.
Just put it in the chat if they want to click on it and.
Oh, you did? Oh, great, thanks. Yeah, but we might send it out anyhow, just to send you information about the next one that's coming up. And let me just ask Joe to say a bit about our next one that will be in April. So Joe, tell us about that one.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. If this meeting was about regulatory fallacy, next month I will be talking about a regulatory train wreck, specifically in the industrial excess landfill in northern Stark County. It was one of the original Superfund sites, originally designated in 1984. 40 years later, it is covered with a semi-permeable cap and surrounded by a fence, and that's it. It's a disaster on many, many levels. It's cost people lives. It's a nightmare, and I hope to have Chris Borello, president of Concerned Citizens of Lake Township, on video next month, and she's a walking dictionary. She's the Erin Brockovich of industrial excess landfill. She's been fighting it for 40 years, and it's just a horrific story, is all I can say.
Yeah, that's just north of Akron, I believe, Uniontown, isn't it,
No,
Joe?
it's just north of Canton.
Canton, Canton.
It's by 3 counties: Summit County, which is being affected now in the city of Greene, Portage County, which is close, and northern Stark County. And the toxic plume continues to spread 40 years later.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Yeah, I hope you can join us for that. All right, any last minute thoughts anybody wants to express there? Otherwise, I really want to thank you for joining us. Yeah, Gwen, go ahead. I think you have to unmute yourself there. There you go.
I just wanted to comment that when oil was first drilled, it took 1 barrel of oil to get 100 barrels out of the ground. Now, particularly with a lot of the stuff they're doing up in Canada and the fracking, it's closer to taking 1 barrel of oil to get 2 barrels out. But still profitable if you get a large subsidy from our taxes.
Yeah, I just we can see that obviously the environmental thing, but I'm thinking of when you think about regulations now, what about what's happening with AI? What's happening about when you brought about the our data, that we don't even own our own data, that these corporations can buy and sell it, and nothing's happened about that, and how their programs that was mentioned earlier have made it so that they're going to the highest bidder, and you can't really find what you want. So there's many, many ways that so-called regulations are there, but are they working for our benefit? And we need to work for something that really will. So any other comments that anybody wants to say? Well,
Thank you, Bill.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and really enjoyed the conversation here. And like I said, we're going to continue this, and you can join us to find out more about what Joe was mentioning, the industrial excess landfill in Ohio, one of the first Superfund sites, and the disaster that is there. And then we'll have other topics in the future there, but that will be Wednesday, April 24th at 6 o'clock. All right, Susie? Yeah, thanks so much, everybody. Appreciate it. Okay, take care.
Okay.
You can stop the recording, I think, Susie.